And we're recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the first Mindclef interview. And I want to say 3 or 4 months. I've been very busy, did a lot of music festivals, did Tanglewood, went to a music festival in Taiwan, spent a couple months in China, and I started college. So changed in scenery for a background. Before I start this interview, I just want to talk about some things we've been doing behind the scenes. My partner, Isabel, has been working hard on our social media content. So we've been posting a lot more consistently on our Instagram. Um, we are having this collaboration with the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So if you live in LA, come stop by. All the information is on our website, and I'll also link it in the description of this video. But NAMI is actually the largest grassroots campaign against mental illness in America. So it's really cool to work with them on that. And yeah, classical wellness. Just to make sure I pronounce this right, correct. It's not even a weird name, but Jaylane, right?
Jaylane, yeah.
Jaylane. Please.
Perfect.
uh, you really need no introduction because of how large you are, but please, just for tradition's sake.
Everyone, hi. It's good to be here. My name's Jaylane. I'm a cellist. I study at Rice University. I'm getting my master's degree in cello performance, and I'm the person behind Classical Wellness, which is a corner of the internet dedicated to musicians' health and wellness. I think we're on the upward trajectory in regards of mental health, but it's still very much something that we need to give more attention to. So I'm happy to be kind of like a home base or a touch base with a what am I trying to say? It's good to be somewhere people can go and feel like they're real people and they can be a musician too.
Yeah, thank you. And this is a great thing you're doing. When I started Mindclef over a year ago, all my friends were telling me, "Oh, do you know classical wellness? Like this is like something similar to what you want to do." And
Mm-hmm.
so that I think that just goes to show how large your audience is. I mean, it's really being spread across the country and across the world. Uh,
It's kind of crazy. I kind of can't believe it. I started that as like a kind of a rebellious type of thing
uh,
because I didn't want to live my life the way like our society tells us to live, but to see so much like support and everyone knows who it is and everyone is like kind of done with the, toxic and cruel mindsets that have been passed down to us. So it's really cool.
yeah, could you elaborate more on what inspired you to start classical wellness?
Well, when I was in conservatory, I was still pretty new to the cello. I had only started when I was 16 years old. And I took a gap year to practice. And I practiced so many hours a day because my teacher was like, oh, yeah, well, people are practicing 4 hours a day. So
Mhm.
you that's what you need to do. So I'm like, okay, let me try it. And I had no idea. I started playing music because it was like my saving grace from my home life. And I thought I need to have music in my life. I had no idea what the culture was like. I had
Mhm.
absolutely no idea how competitive, how perfect everyone was striving to be. So when I got to school, not where I am right now, but when I got to conservatory, I was thrown into the deep end without knowing how to swim. That's what I like to say. Like I didn't know how to navigate the music world. And I it was a few years before I started classical wellness, but it was a compounding, disdain and annoyance and disagreement with the way that we do things, the way that we are told that, hustle is the only way to succeed, or practicing all your waking hours is the only way to succeed. It was just a very high bar. And most of the people I knew were struggling at some point with it. So I started classical wellness and I had a plan. I had a plan that I'm going to change the world. Like, I'm going to change the world. Back when this was so small and everyone told me, no, you're not. You're not going to, like, don't, don't trip. It's not going to be that serious. And I kind of thought that too, like in the back of my mind, but I never would have said it out loud. I wanted to like put into the world, like, I'm going to do this, whether you guys like it or not. But in my mind, I was like, I'll try, but there's a chance I won't do it. But I started it and people started liking it. Like people started responding and sharing. And I thought, oh, okay, cool. And now it's way past anything I would have even thought of. I had this wild dream, oh, I'll change the whole classical music world. But in
Mhm.
reality, I thought it would never, I meant my world. I didn't think it would go to all parts of the country. I was planning on changing, my environment, but
Mhm.
it's turned out pretty well.
Yeah, talking about, countries and your international success, you went to the Royal Conservatory of Scotland, I believe, right?
Yeah.
But you're not actually from Europe, you're from the States. Is that correct?
I'm from Seattle.
Seattle. So what was the classical music scene like in Seattle compared to Scotland?
Well, the thing is, I started so late that I wasn't prepared to be in the world. I took lessons with a prominent teacher there, but I wasn't in the youth symphony. I wasn't in the chamber music festivals. I
Mhm.
I wasn't really in that. But even then, I know that it's not as big. The music world is not as big as it is in the East Coast or even in California. California, you have the San Francisco Conservatory, you have Colburn, you have the symphonies, and there's the Seattle Symphony, but there isn't a lot of things for students in
Mhm.
Seattle. So I honestly don't feel like I missed much. I had two friends, two of my best friends they were both violinists and they were in all of that stuff. They had like the typical like tiger mom vibe where they were like practicing their whole lives for music. So this is my own like view of what Seattle was like. I'm sure it was very rigorous for them, but the UK is very, very different from the US in terms of school.
And so I think that's really interesting because whenever I go to music festivals where people come from all over the country, or maybe I'll perform in a statewide orchestra, I'm introduced to people who are incredible players but have never actually had ensemble experience. And I always find that to be crazy because I actually I started music in a El Sistema inspired program called Yola. It was founded by Gustavo Dudamel and the LA Phil,
Mm,
and I didn't have any private lessons until high school. Um, and so to me, like the idea of like people taking private lessons and then ensemble classes and group classes is kind of weird.
yeah.
Do you think that there's a benefit to that because you're kind of sheltered from competition until you're kind of at a more mature stage in your life? Or do you think it's better to start that early ensemble playing where you can develop like the ways of being a kind player and being able to deal with people who you may not get along with so well?
I think that's a really good question. I think that there is value in waiting till you're older to do something. Like, I'm very glad I didn't start when I was super young because I think starting at 16, like you're mature at that age, like what you actually need to do. You're not really forcing yourself to do it. In terms of group stuff, I think personally that it's not a bad thing to have shelter from that for a long time. I think within our culture, the the type of competition there is, I wish there was more, I wish it was more welcoming to be like a beginner in a sense. Like everything is so fast paced. Everything is
Mhm.
so, you're expected to be the best already. Like even the music festivals that are really, really rigorous, you have to be good enough already to get in. You have to have recordings that are good enough to learn from the best, which is sort of ironic because everyone wants to learn and it shouldn't matter how much chamber experience you have. If you're a promising musician, you should have that education no matter what. So I don't think it's bad. I i would be it would be unfortunate if that person who was really good and had no chamber music experience was denied the proper education because they weren't experienced. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
yeah. It's interesting how you think of being late to the music game as a good thing, because I know personally, and a lot of my colleagues all wish, oh, I wish I would have started earlier. How did you did you ever have that mindset of wanting to start earlier? And if you did you change it? Or why do you have this mindset?
I I definitely did not like that I was like among the worst, players. I didn't like that I had the least amount of experience, that I always was feeling like I didn't know what the heck was going on. I didn't like those feelings. But I know that I know a lot of people who started when they were very young, before they knew what they wanted, when
Mhm.
their parents made them, and they don't like it now. Now they're about to quit, or they get injured and they have to quit, and their whole lives are falling apart because this is all they know. I think starting later for me, it helped me solidify what I actually wanted. Like I chose 100% myself that I wanted to be a musician. It wasn't just handed to me and I had to fight for it. And I think for my situation, I wouldn't have been able to. It was even a miracle that I started at 16. I wouldn't have been able to start earlier. And I don't think I would have even had the mind to start earlier. Like I wouldn't have been able to sit there and practice for 2 hours or even 1 hour.
Uh-huh.
I just, knowing myself, I'm not speaking for everyone, but for me, it was actually pretty good. And I think that many people don't choose, like, and I don't even think it's the majority, but just enough people to where it's something worth talking about.
Mm. Yeah, I can kind of relate to that because I didn't feel like I really had a passion for music until um pretty late into my musical career. I don't understand how it, and I don't want to like make any accusations, but I feel like when people are like really young and say like, oh, I love music because I can express myself and I'm so passionate about it. What are you expressing?
Yeah, like you don't know what you're no,
How
I think they're just saying that because they hear others say it and they want to,
exactly?
but I totally agree. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah,
I kind of like roll my eyes. And I mean, yeah, we don't want to accuse, but yeah, when you before you are mature enough, it's really hard to do the things that connect you with the music. You know what I mean? Like once you are older, you kind of start understanding how this connects with actual feelings and actual emotion. But when you're young, you kind of nod. This is what I did. I would just nod and
yeah,
pretend like I got it because I was too scared to say, what the heck are you talking about, teacher? Like I don't get it at all.
yeah,
But I think that the older you are, the better. But okay, because there's a caveat there. Of course, if you want to be like a soloist, all the soloists we know have started when they were 5 and they had their first solo gig when they were like 12. Like
uh-huh.
it's just, you can't compete with those people. But I think the goal needs to shift. We don't need to compete with those people in order to be like fulfilled as musicians.
Yeah. Well, I want to get back to our regular conversation, but I'm very impressed. You got into, by the way, who are you working with at Rice University?
Norman Fisher.
Norman Fisher. Is he the principal of the Houston Symphony or is that
That
Brinton?
is Brinton.
Yeah.
Brinton Avril Smith
Uh-huh.
is the principal now, and the other teacher is Desmond Hobig, and he was the previous principal, and he doesn't do that anymore. He just teaches.
Yeah,
Norman
it's
Fisher is
amazing
known for
how good
his.
the faculty is at Rice.
It's good. It's good. Yeah, it's kind of a. I'm. I do believe that I got in because I'm here, but it's almost like wow, 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 wow. I can't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, congratulations for that. I saw that I was following your Instagram when I saw your Rice acceptance. I was like, wow, like that's incredible because you don't really post much of your playing on your Instagram,
Yeah.
so I didn't really have any
Yeah, I
understanding of
think
your playing.
I'm gonna start posting my playing because I think it's good for people to see that you don't have to kill yourself to to be like successful. You have to be smart, you have to be consistent, you have to be very practical in what you do, but you don't have to work 8 hours a day.
Mhm. And something I'm thinking about doing, because I also have a practice account that I don't post on at all, but I do have one. Um, the reason I don't post on it is because I always want to post something that I think is presentable, something that's
Mm-hmm.
one of my best performances of the piece. And I want to start, I think that's like something really good about like, the 100 days of practice trends. I think it could be really good to show everyone like the progress from like where you start out from, all the mistakes, the bad intonation, all of that, and then like seeing like the progress because it doesn't really matter where you start, it just matters where you end.
Yeah. Yeah. I did the 100 days of practice challenge on my old practice account before I started classical wellness. And I did the whole challenge. I finished it. And it really taught me like, you cannot have a highlight reel on there.
Yeah.
You can't only post a highlight reel. It's so much about the process. And I could tell like when I first started versus when I ended, I was playing a lot better because when you do that sort of thing where you're regularly like posting your playing, regardless of if it's perfect or not, you kind of learn to let these mistakes roll off your shoulder. You kind of
Yeah.
figure out what's really important. Of course, we try and act like perfection is possible and that it's like really, really important. But what matters really is like making music and not boring your audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think posting realistic stuff is always better than stressing about posting a highlight reel.
Yeah. And I think another like indirect benefit of doing that is it kind of, I haven't done it yet, but I would assume it would ease your performance anxiety because you're used to knowing in your head, like knowing that people are watching you make mistakes and knowing that it's not the end of the world. Actually feel fine afterwards. It's the before. It's like going on a roller coaster. Beforehand, you think it's really scary. You think you're going to be judged. You think, people are going to leave hate comments or whatever. But then you
Yeah,
post it, everyone's
it's
supportive.
fine.
It's totally fine.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
It definitely helped with that too. I think you should try it.
I should try it. Uh, yeah, I have like 40 posts in like
Oh, that's
three
not bad at
years.
all.
Oh, it's
Oh,
been
in
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, but it's okay.
You got to start somewhere.
Gotta start somewhere. A bit of a random question, but what do you think the ideal age generally is to start an instrument
The ideal age based on what? So here's what I think. When
for
you first
for
asked that,
general population?
I first thing I said was 8 years old. And the reason I think that is because my old teacher said it, not because I've actually thought like, what's the great age? But he said that 8 years old, like you're still young, but you're old enough to like have a sense of responsibility and have your own, like, you're supposed to practice. It's not like when you're 5, when you have to like literally sit there and like tell your 5 year old every single move to make. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So I've always thought when he said that, I've always just been like, okay, that's a good enough answer for me. That it could be true that it's a little bit later. It could be true that it's a little bit earlier, although I doubt that if it's earlier. But I think around 8 to 10, that's a good place to start if you have drive and have a good teacher, because a good teacher is very, very important.
yeah.
Uh, it's not, and really the ideal, we're talking about very much ideal, but you can start at any time.
Hmm.
I don't think there's a cutoff, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, personally, I wasn't very responsible as an 8-year-old, but I know there's
Neither was
more
I.
people who are.
Yeah, neither was I. But I think when you maybe if your family has all your ducks in a row and you have a very like supportive environment, then that could be ideal. But yeah, for me, where I was 8 years old, no, that would have been terrible.
Yeah, yeah, it's
But
especially hard with financial barriers. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, talking about financial barriers, college. Um, so Royal Conservatory of Scotland. Uh, what made you choose the Royal Conservatory of Scotland?
My teacher in Seattle knew the teacher in Scotland,
Uh-huh.
and he was trying to find me the best teacher who would support me as like a behind cellist and who would help me like be patient and bring me up to the level that my peers would be at. And I had a lesson with her. Her name's Allison Wells. I had a lesson with her and I was like so in love with her. Like she was so nurturing and so helpful. And it seemed like she had a magic wand and she'd say something so simple and it would fix all my problems. So I auditioned there. It was the only place I auditioned. It was the only place I even applied to. I was gonna apply for one other school, the state school in Washington,
Hmm.
but I didn't because the way that they do it in the UK is so much sooner. Like I knew I got in by January, and
Wow.
here you don't even audition till February.
Yeah.
So it was way earlier. So once I found out I got in, I just said I'm not even going to apply to this other school because I know I'm going to Scotland. And it's
Hmm.
actually cheaper. It was cheaper to go there than stay in the US.
Yeah. Yeah, I would assume so. The US colleges. Um, so Royal Conservative of Scotland, Rice University. How do the mental health resources compare?
I think that both schools care. I think both schools care. I think the school in Scotland has a little bit more. I think that in Scotland and in the UK in general, maybe even Europe, it's just like a part of life to take breaks. It's a part of life it's not, maybe it is a taboo thing, but it's not really like how it is here where you are worked to the bone and you have to take off because you burn out or something or get injured or something. I think in Scotland, it's much more natural and normal to take time off regularly so you don't reach crisis mode easily. At Rice, it's very, very intense. They
Hmm.
have a resource center, though, for mental health. And I don't know how many people like use it because it's super far removed from the music school. The resource center is for all of Rice. It's not just for Shepherd.
Uh-huh.
And they have resources there. And they tell us all the time, like if you're struggling, go to these places. Like they want us to do well. I
Uh-huh.
think though that it's more about giving people a good environment to thrive in instead of letting it be so intense that you have to rely on the mental health resources. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think and I don't know if this is just Rice. I don't think it is. And I love Rice as a whole. I think in general, the US is very mm, I can't think of the word right now, but it's hectic. It's very like you're doing so much stuff. You're speeding through stuff. You're trying to get through as much rep as possible. You're doing a theory class, a history class. You got to write these papers on top of practicing hours a day. You have orchestra and
Yeah.
it's good. It's rigorous. That's what the word I was using. It's very rigorous. And there's not enough room to, breathe. I
Yeah.
I I'm trying to speak I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible because I don't think any of these institutions are wrong in wanting us to do work, but I think there could be a little more like built in support instead of saying, here, you can handle all this yourself. And if you need help, go over there across campus to the help center.
Hmm. Yeah. I think, America was built off of this hustle culture. And so the colleges, for music a lot less so, but for a general major, there's a lot of just like get through this, put as much information in your head as possible, and try to like make money. It's not really try to find yourself, try to find your passions, try
Yeah.
to find what works for you. I
Mm-hmm.
I was I made a joke to my friend at the end of high school, because I was very busy in high school. I was part of a lot of after school programs, a lot of orchestras. Um, and once like high school ended, I said, okay, now like the real work actually starts because we finally got a break. This is the time I can finally like on my own schedule do what I want. And sometimes I move at a more accelerated pace than what
Mhm.
school wants, but then sometimes I move at a slower pace. And I think that luckily for music, it's a little bit better in that sense, especially at my school. Everyone seems to be generally encouraging,
Mhm.
but I think there's a big fear of making money in America because there's a lot less support. And I don't want to get into politics on a interview about mental health, but it's hard for people to sustain themselves. I think I saw you recently post about the something something symphony. Well, it was like KW Symphony. I've never
Oh,
heard of them.
yes, yes. The KWS, no, KW Symphony in Canada.
Canada.
Yeah, they just totally like blew them off. It was so
Okay.
wild.
Well, Canada's a little bit different, but I think there's another orchestra you also recently like it was another one that started with K, I think. Was it Kansas or Kentucky? Um,
Maybe there's been a handful that I've maybe not post about on my feed, but maybe it's Kansas. Maybe you're right on that.
there's an American orchestra that they have to like raise funds to pay themselves to work.
It's really,
That
it's
that's
really
that it's
bad.
awful. It's kind of I all my family was telling me don't do music, don't not my parents, but everyone else, don't do music. You can't make money in music. Can you do anything with your hands? Stuff like that.
I think the one recently, maybe Kansas had something, but I know that the orchestra that I posted about most recently was Canadian and had to
Huh.
raise funds for their stuff. I don't know what the difference is though between Canada and America.
Um, well, Canada is socialist, right? So at the very least, the musicians won't will have healthcare and all of that.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Well, that's something.
yeah,
But
and
that's
we don't
like
have
for a
that.
job though. If you're in an orchestra here, you'll have healthcare too.
Well, that's the thing. If you don't get an orchestra position, if you're just a freelancer, you won't have healthcare.
Yep.
There's a big pressure to get into a major orchestra, and it's
Yeah.
also really hard to get into a major orchestra. Um, I think
It's
that could be where, like why like mental health is kind of deprioritized in
yeah,
America.
it's about making money. It's about surviving.
Yeah. And we don't want to like make the mistakes of our predecessors, but at the
Mhm.
same time, I think maybe focusing on reprioritizing mental health, not just for musicians, not just for students, but for everybody, I think would really positively impact our country.
Man, it's so wild to think freelancers will not have healthcare. We have to make a living doing, freelance work and then pay for healthcare. And healthcare is so expensive.
Yeah.
Kind of
I mean,
sucks.
it makes sense. It makes sense why my family who care about me, they want me to be happy, but
Yeah.
they don't think I can be happy if I'm not able to pay for,
Yeah.
medical insurance. And uh, recently, with college, I've had to pay a lot of my own stuff. There's been some things in my family that have happened, and I've had to like help kind of pay for the,
Mm,
taxes and stuff. And
yeah.
it's kind of overwhelming, like filling out taxes and I had to submit FAFSA forms, make financial aid appeals
Yeah.
to do
It's
that and be able to practice as
it's
much as you
really
want to is
hard.
impossible.
Yeah. We're very privileged in a way. And I say that lightly because, it's a loaded word, but we have we're privileged and unprivileged in multiple different facets because on the one hand we get to do what we actually love, but there are
Mhm.
definitely some caveats there, like having to pay for healthcare, having to struggle to pay bills. I mean, it's just not ideal. I get why your family would want you to do something else. And I know that a lot of people might relate to that. Like their family is not supportive of a music career because of how what is the word I'm looking for? It's not steady. It's
Hmm.
not steady. You don't have a steady check coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the best thing you can get is tenure, and that's making it to the highest level. And
Yeah.
that's most of us don't make it up there.
Yeah. 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 It sucks. We got to fix the world.
Yeah.
See if we can do something about this.
Mhm. Getting to that point of making it to the highest level that you can, not of music, but that you can. Let's talk about some of your resources and what you provide. When I was doing research for this interview, I looked at your morning routine guide, and of course, you went over in the workshop that you did earlier today. First of all, anyone watching, I'd recommend it. It's free. Thank you for this resource. Uh, I'm really not a morning person, so I just happen to be looking for ways to improve my sleep and all that. And anyways, and I think this morning routine was perfect for me. Um, I
Cool.
personally don't like practicing in the morning, but
Yeah.
I think it would be useful if I did.
I
Uh,
think that there are you don't have to make yourself into a morning person. The good thing about that guide is that it works for any type of routine. It could be a night routine. I just named it the morning routine guide because
mhm,
I wanted to have a name, but it really works for any type of routine. Anytime you want to implement something regular. So if you're listening to this and you're not a morning person either, it will still apply.
mhm.
It'll still apply to you.
Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of a routine?
I think that having a routine gives you like the foundation to do everything else in your life. And I don't say this to say that if you don't have a routine that you're going to like, I don't know, fail at everything, but having a routine lets your mind stop working so hard. Like you don't have to work as hard. You don't have as much mental chatter in your brain as you're trying to figure out what to do with your days. And it doesn't mean you do the same thing every day, but having a way to set up your day or to go to sleep at night. Right now, I'm doing morning routines. I mean, doing night routines. I don't have a morning routine because my mornings are so different. Some days I wake
Yeah.
up early, some days I don't, things like that. I have a night routine and just having something to anchor you into like reality so you don't get swept up in the to-do lists and the drive for success. It just helps me at least clear my mind of all that mental chatter so I can think about the important things like how am I going to practice today or what am I going to do how am I going to make progress on this paper I'm writing, things like that.
Mhm. And without getting too personal into your nighttime routine, would you mind sharing a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's not that bad. I turn off all my electronics. Sometimes when I want to be on electronics, I have a rule that I only am on in the living room because my room is like if I go on in my bed, I notice that I have really bad like I can't go to sleep if I lay on my phone in bed. I just think and think and think. So since I've got here, I've implemented a new rule where I don't scroll in my bed or I don't watch shows in my bed, only in the living room. I brush and floss my teeth. I take a shower, a long shower, and I think about, okay, what have I done today that I can like give myself a pat on the back for? Like when I'm getting ready for bed, putting my PJs on, I'm like, okay, this and this and this happened. This didn't go so well. I didn't have a good practice session. How can I make it better? Or what can I change? How can I approach it better? And this doesn't have to take a long time. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be super extravagant. And I also keep a journal. If anyone follows my page or has been following for a while, I like journaling and I have a journal that goes with me everywhere I go. Sometimes I write like a diary, sometimes I'm writing to-do lists, sometimes I'm writing things to remember. It just it's a second brain for me. It doesn't have to be uh super complex, but I kind of do a brain dump at night and just write about how I'm feeling, like, things I want to do. A lot of times I end up talking about my big goals or writing about my big goals, which I think is very
Mhm.
important to think about on a regular basis. Because again, we get super swept up and caught up in like the daily tasks and practicing and things like that, the things that will move you forward little by little. But I think it's cool to think about your big goals every now and again. So it's not a really complex nighttime routine. I don't do face masks. I don't, meditate. Of
Mhm.
course, those things, sometimes you do them, sometimes you don't, but
Yeah.
it can be very simple.
Yeah, and you know, I personally use an app for my journaling, and I found that to be the best for me. So I'm not
Good.
necessarily asking you to convince me otherwise, but I just want to hear what your reasoning is for choosing to do a written journal as opposed to something on technology. Is that just kind of to keep away from technology at bedtime?
No, no, I actually like technology. It sounds like I don't, but I actually think technology is very useful for a lot of things. But I know that writing things down, like on paper, your brain processes it differently, like as you're writing.
Hmm.
And it helps with memory. And for me, it feels better. Like I'm always on my phone. Like I write for Instagram all day. Like I'm online a lot. So I think for me, someone who's creating like so much,
Hmm.
I have to have something else. But before I used to have a million notes in my notes app. Before I started classical wellness, I did everything on my phone. But once
Hmm.
I learned that your brain processes differently, and the holistic psychologist made a post about that. I didn't fact check it. I just believe it. So anyone listening, just look it up and see if that is a good thing for you or you're interested in that. But for me, it just makes me feel better. It could be placebo effect, but that's just
Hmm.
why.
Yeah. With all that you do you get burnt out still, or have you sort of been able to, with all your experience and being kind of a mentor for a lot of people and avoiding stress and burnout, are you able to kind of stay away from the burnout now?
I think now I know myself uh, very well, so I know my own signs, but
Hmm.
that doesn't mean I'm not immune to burnout. I still screw up. I still push myself a little too far. I still want to meet deadlines, and it
Hmm.
doesn't happen as much or as severely as it used to, because I know, like, okay, this is what's happening. This is what I need to do to fix it. And I can either take that or leave that. And I know I'll be burnt out. And once I'm burnt out, I'll have to stop, full stop.
Hmm.
So it still happens to me. I'm a human, but it does not happen in the same way or in
Hmm.
the same frequency at all.
Yeah. So what are some signs of burnout, or right before burnout, so you can avoid it?
I think if you are starting to feel overwhelmed with your schedule, like if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do and how am I going to get it all done?
Hmm.
You and if you're a musician, it's likely that you're on track to burn out. You might not be burnt out yet, but you are on track if you keep doing things exactly as you are. And I said this earlier, but we have been taught to ignore the signs of stress and of burnout. And we do because we know that at one point in time, we could do this work, we could do this level of work. But as time goes on, you have less and less capacity, less and less energy. And we feel things like we feel like, oh, I really don't want to do this. And instead of thinking, why don't I want to do this when I did before? We
Hmm.
think, oh, something's wrong with us and I just need to push through because that's what everyone else does. So I think if you're feeling any of the subtle signs that you're feeling like this is too much, listen. And that doesn't mean give up on everything, but that just means take a beat and say, what's going on here that is making me feel this way? And how can I be kinder, more kind to myself, and what can I adjust to make it a little bit less overwhelming.
Mhm. I saw this quote on Instagram a while back that said, discipline is doing the hard work when you don't want to. What's your opinion on that? It sort of contradicts your idea of like when you don't feel like doing something, try to like figure out why. But do you think there is value to pushing through it at any point, or is there a balance anywhere?
I think there's value to knowing yourself and to knowing when you don't want to do something. Is it because I just don't feel like it? Or is it because I'm tired? And I think that there are some people think that there's always a reason why you don't want to do something and you must listen to it. Like
Hmm.
if you don't want to do something, then you don't want it, then you shouldn't do it. And I feel like we're musicians, and of course there's going to be things we don't want to do.
Yeah.
Of course. Like, I'm sorry, nobody wants to practice every single day. Like,
Yeah.
the the important thing though is that you cultivate a relationship with yourself, so you know, if I don't want to do something, how do I know if I just am, I'm not trying not to say lazy, but if you just don't feel like it, or if you actually need a break. Because a lot of times
Hmm.
we've taught ourselves to think, oh, what we're really feeling is I'm tired and I need to lay down. I need to take a rest. But if you're thinking, oh, I want to go to this party later, and so I don't want to practice, that's a little bit like, okay, there you can make a choice to stay disciplined. It's all about balance. I don't think that quote in itself is bad, but using that to avoid taking rest when you need it regularly, that can be a slippery slope.
Hmm. I want to ask you, where's the line between wasting time and taking a break?
I don't think there's a an objective line. I don't think there's an objective line between wasting time or taking a break. I think of course we'll all think we're wasting time when we're taking time off. In this society, in the music world, where we've been taught like you've got to practice all day and you got to
Hmm.
keep working towards your goals or you're not going to make it. Every minute that you take off could feel like wasting time. Again, I think it's accepting that you need time off. You need like something that resembles a life outside of music if you want to be healthy. I mean, that I think there's okay, I'll say this. There's a fine line between taking rest and using you being tired as an excuse. Because once you and that is a slippery slope too, because you can go to the other side of the spectrum and say, oh, I need a break, I need a break, I need a break, I need a break, and pretty soon you haven't practiced in a month or two. Of course you want to be realistic at all times, but I don't think it shouldn't even be in the realm of possibilities of you wasting time if you're tired. Being tired isn't something we control. It's not something that we can just, erase. If you're tired, you have to rest. And that's something I think we haven't really like accepted or acknowledged yet. We think we're superhumans. But yeah.
Yeah. I thank you for all of your answers so far.
Yeah.
Very, very well thought out, very kind. But I think if you were a less kind person, you could have responded to my questions with, well, it just depends on who you are. And you're kind of talking about how the answers to these questions are different for individuals, and it's really important to get to know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to know yourself?
I think, well, if you really want a practical answer, journaling. I love journaling. I think getting to know yourself is so much of a journey. And I was actually just thinking about this the other day. Like, if I were to teach a class on finding who you are, like, what would I say? And I think it starts with removing the world's ideas of who you should be or what type of person you should be. I think that was where I started. At first I was like, okay, I don't agree with what the world is saying. So I'm just removing myself from that. And I had to accept, like, people might not think I'm serious. I know I'm serious, but people might not think that. And I'm just going to, deal with it until something else happens. Like I had to accept that. And I think it also takes, I could give you a step-by-step process, but I don't think it would be useful because everyone is so different. I think the main thing that we all have to do is give ourselves enough space to actually think about what we want without any of the repercussions that we think are going to affect us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we need to have space from practicing, space from our education, space from work, to think, what would I be doing if I had no money problems? What would I be doing if I had no obligations to spend all my days practicing? What would I be doing if I didn't have these outside pressures? And that's a process, because a lot of people don't know. I didn't know when I first started. Well, when I first started this process of, like, I want to figure out what really matters to me, I didn't really know. I didn't know how to spot what it was. I looking back, the signs were all there, but I just didn't know the language. So I think it's just having space, or being able to remove yourself from time to time to think, like, what do I really enjoy? And sometimes it's not music. Some people will, those people who started when they were 5 because their parents made them, sometimes the answer will be totally different. So I think it's just, and which is scary. So I think it's just having the space and the compassion for yourself for whatever answer it would be, regardless of what anyone else is going to say.
Great answer. Thank you. I want to follow up on something you mentioned about what other people say and how other people will view you, and how your mind tricks you into thinking that other people judge you. And this is obviously something that is in a lot of aspects of classical music, not just finding yourself, but performance anxiety, the way you should play, the way you should perform, the way you should practice. How do you get over that? I personally see myself wanting, like, respect from, let's say, upperclassmen, or like, I sometimes I feel like I have, like, disappointment when teachers don't give me the attention that I think I deserve, or I lose recognition from a panel, or or just people are just laughing at someone else's playing. I think, oh well, then what's to stop them from laughing at my playing? How do you avoid this thought process? Because it's easy to say, nobody's judging you, but there is a lot of judgment in classical music. How do you just ignore that? How do you tune out the noise?
I guess there's no tuning it out. And I tried, because I know that, because I tried. And I tried to say, they're not really thinking about me, but it's the same. I heard people talking about other people's playing, and I hear that at this school too. Like, it's totally alive and well, the judgment here and everywhere. And I tried to tune it out. It didn't work. I think the only thing you can do is tell yourself that they are judging you, but that doesn't mean that what they're saying is true. Like, let's say you're performing and you play a wrong note, you miss the shift, and these people say, oh, he's so bad, she's so bad, anybody. And you did miss the shift, but that they can't make an opinion. They can't say that you're a bad musician because of that one shift. Yeah. And they will, because that makes them feel better. It's all like, nobody's out to get anyone. I think we're all just trying to cope and build ourselves up in a society where it's super hard to be built up. I think you just have to accept is not the right word, but know that it's happening, but also know that that's about them. And you making mistakes doesn't mean that you're not a good musician. It doesn't mean that you have less of a right to be there. Like, you guys are both at the same school. So I think, look, I'm here just like you. So if you're talking shit about me, sorry to cuss. No, don't worry. You can delete that if you want. But if you're talking about me, that's about you. That's not about me. You can say whatever you want, but I know that mistake, it doesn't mean I'm a bad player. Even if I make many mistakes, it doesn't mean I'm a bad player. It might mean I have performance anxiety. It might mean I don't work well under pressure, but that doesn't mean I am not a good musician and I don't have a right to be there and learn.
Yeah, I just want to add on to this a little bit. For my English class, we got the opportunity to write a research paper on our own topic of choice. And I'm a music and psychology double major. So of course
Hmm.
I wrote it on something psychology related. And I might actually have the book here.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
there's a couple of books. Uh, this one is Psychology and Music. This one is Introduction to Psychology and Music. Pretty
Cool.
similar, but basically they talk about I forgot the names of the two psychologists who investigated this, but there's a big debate between whether or not um, the primary source of a musician's ability comes from environmental factors or genetic factors. And
What they say.
that's the debate.
Oh, oh, oh.
Um, and it's kind of it my answer based off of the research that I've done, it's been like 4 days, um, is that it's a little bit of both, you know, because you can be like, I think, you know, I think people with larger hands, but like depend like finger size might be better for octaves. Like personally, I have kind of weird hands, so I play cello too. Um,
Hmm.
whenever I don't want to get too much into cello technique, but my fingers cave in a lot. And it's because I
Okay.
have really long fingers compared
Yeah.
to my hand proportion. And I also have my hands are kind of restricted, so when I do octaves, I have it's hard for me to do 1/4. So
Yeah.
like in the prelude of the C major suite, that one octave I really had a hard time with.
Hmm.
Um, so I think like you can have these genetic capabilities, but without really good environmental factors, like uh
Yeah.
you might still have a hard time. And then on the other hand, uh, if you're gonna have like a really good teacher or be fortunate enough to have a pretty stable home life and
Yes.
the resources you need, then yeah, of course you're also gonna be more likely to be successful. And I think this goes to show that in a way, all of our success as musicians and all of our failures, of course we control it by how we work, how constructive our practice is, but we were all built to play our own way, work our own way. Some of us are just not going to have the capabilities to play as well as Rostropovich, right?
Hmm.
um and you know I think that, like you said, a lot of the time when we feel bad about ourselves because we see another musician play so much better than us. Like we think, wow, like all this hard work, I'm putting everything into this, and I can't play better than this person. This person works less hard than I do, and they're playing at a higher level than I do, and that leads to insecurities, and insecurity leads to kind of an urge to judge people who are at a lower level than us.
Hmm.
So I want to transition to this idea of how to be on the other side because I will admit I'm not perfect. I may be the director of operations for a mental health for classical musicians website, but I definitely judge other musicians. I judge myself, and my mental health is definitely not in a perfect place. I
Yeah.
want to ask you how you can sort of deal with those insecurities that are inevitable and make sure that you maintain yourself as a positive member in the classical music community.
I think it's human to judge. I don't think that and this is why I said that I know people are judging because everybody judges. And I don't even think it's unhealthy up to a certain point. I think it's natural to want to see where we are in the world, like how we line up with other people in the world. I don't think that in itself is a bad thing. I think knowing that, again, judgment is about us. when we're judging other people, it's really about us. And this is for me too. And everybody, when we judge people, it's to make ourselves feel better. It's to validate ourselves because we are not being validated in another way. Like, we want to feel like we have a place here. And it just so happens that judging others is a way that we do that. Now, do I think that that's great? No, of course not. Of course, you probably don't either, but it's just, I think there's a human part that does that. So I've been working hard on this because obviously you and I have like a responsibility, to build a new paradigm, even though we still do these things because we're human. I've thought, okay, my judgment, it's about me. Even if I think something, I don't have to say it. I don't need to say it to anyone else. I can think it in my mind. And what I think doesn't really matter. Thoughts are just thoughts. And I know that this one mistake that this person makes, or whatever I'm judging them about, I know that this doesn't actually affect their worth as a human. Mm-hmm. Like, they can make mistakes and they can be judged for it, but that it doesn't make me better and it doesn't make them worse. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a process though. I'm saying it like it's easy, but it's very much a process.
It's hard. The nicest friends I have also, talking to me, like, they feel so bad about judging others, but
yeah,
I think musicians of all levels judge others, and then yes, musicians also judge musicians for judging other musicians, and
yes, yeah, a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep you too long, but we have been kind of trying to schedule this interview for a while, and since then, I started college, as you started your master. You just started your master's, right?
Woo-hoo! Yeah.
Yeah.
How is it going for you, by the way?
I'm honestly thinking about dropping my psychology double major because
it's hard, isn't it?
How hard there's just too much math involved. I didn't expect there to be so much math. To be fair, I think once I'm past like all the statistics and all that, I'll be free. Anyways, too off topic.
Maybe we'll talk another time.
Yeah. This is college is hard.
College is hard.
And I did not get a chance to practice as much as I wanted to in high school. There are a lot of factors, transportation I didn't go to the closest school to me. It's a lot of things. So maybe I practice 2 hours a day, which is fine for a high schooler, but I personally want to take things to the next level. And so my teacher recommends, or he requires, but he doesn't like really hold us accountable to it, 20 hours of practice a week, which, so if you're practicing 3 hours a day, you can hit that, but there's going to be days where you can't hit that 3 hours. And then there's going to be days where you can't make up for those 3 hours because you can't really practice at all. So I find myself really struggling with time management. And I know we brought you in and did a workshop on time management. I just want to see if you can give us a really a crash course on how you'd recommend managing your time.
First off, I want to speak on the 20 hours a week thing. Yes, if you're practicing 3 hours a day every day, you're going to make the 20 hours, but you're not going to do that. Just full stop. You're, like you said, you're going to have off days, and you should be planning at least some days off, 1 day a week off. That should be strict. That should be very strict. So the result of that is,
not to interrupt you, but on that 1 day off, I know you mentioned that in the workshop too. Do you not practice at all on that 1 day off?
I don't practice at all. Sometimes I'll do some mental practice if I feel like, first of all, energized to do it, but something that I have to be very strict about, of course, because my place in this community is if I take a break, I take a break. I don't say, oh, I'm free. Now I can do everything else that I've been wanting to do. That's a very slippery slope. So I would say don't if you only do one day off a week, don't play at all. If you want to do mental practice, you can, but just don't play. And I also take some evenings off or like a morning off. I don't
Oh,
push myself so much. But I will say that the times I'm working very hard. I'm working like I do a lot during the times I'm not working. So I feel like I deserve that time off. I feel like if you're practicing 20 hours a week and you're taking one day off, you'll have to do a few big practice days, which means that you can't have so much else to do. Like this is what, again, time management is so subjective. It's about every person. But what I said in the workshop was you have to know if it's realistic. If 20 hours a week is really realistic with all the other classes that you have to do, look at your calendar, lay out everything, all the stuff that are classes that are scheduled outside of what you schedule yourself. Like practice, you schedule that yourself. But orchestra rehearsals, chamber rehearsals, classes, homework time, that's stuff that, well, homework time is you schedule yourself, but all the other stuff, that's planned out for you. So you have to work around that. So you start there, then you add in your practice. And don't just add in practice haphazardly. Actually think about what your goals are for the next week or the next 2 weeks, and think
mhm.
about what you have to do to reach those goals. You have to work backwards. And this takes planning. It's not just something you can just think about in 1 second. You have to take about 10 minutes or 15, like looking at your schedule, planning out your practice time, what you want to do in those practice times. And I showed my schedule and my practice blocks. I was averaging but anywhere between 3 to 5 hours a day with that one day off. And I think last week was I had one evening and one morning off. I write in my calendar the what I want to practice for those sessions. And of course, I'll be flexible because you can't live your life like that, just totally living like a robot. You'll have to be flexible, but having a plan at least to fall back on. And then if you want to change it, being flexible enough to change it, that's something that's helped me a lot in staying consistent and staying like on top of things. Of course, there will be off days. We ebb and flow. We are very cyclical beings, but having a plan and being very realistic and looking ahead, always looking ahead. Look forward in your calendar, see what's happening. Doing psychology and a music double major, that's wild. That is like very impressive. And I didn't know there was math in it either. So you have like, there's a lot to do. There's a lot. So definitely for anyone who's doing a double major, I knew someone else who did a double major too. And he was busy all the time, but I'd say he did okay. I think it's hard for anyone, but it's not the end of the world if you're doing a double major.
Mhm. Do you know how teachers say it's better to practice a little bit every day and as opposed to like practicing a lot on some days and not at all on other days? What do you think of that?
I think that's valid. I think if you have the space to practice a little bit every day, go ahead, but taking one day off is not going to ruin your life. I
Mhm.
think what they mean by that, this is my opinion. What they mean by that is don't practice for 2 weeks for 5 hours a day and then take a month off. I think that's what they mean. I don't think they mean practice every single day, literally, and don't take a single day off. I think one day will be okay to take off. 2 days will be okay. I hear that 3 days is where you start like deteriorating, like you have to like work it back up. But I take longer than 3 days off when I can. Like if I'm getting out of school, like Christmas break, I'll take more than 3 days off for sure. I
Mm.
think, and in the summer between festivals, I'll take more than 3 days off for sure. And I'll just have a plan to come back. I don't think it's bad to take time off, especially in the state we are in life with our mental health being so important.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm so exhausted after music festivals. It,
Yeah,
it feels
yeah.
like you're almost like more tired after the last day of a music festival than the last day of school. I don't know why. I
It's
guess
so rigorous.
I really try so hard during the 2 weeks or 4 weeks or
Yeah,
whatever, and then I come
yeah.
out of it like, wow, real
I
life.
need, yeah, real life. I always take a break after a music festival, and I think
Do
everyone should.
you do anything during your break to make it? I know it kind of goes against the idea of a break, but do you do anything to make the break more productive? Like more benefits from the break?
Um, yeah, I think I think the answer is I take a real break. I I am very adamant about taking time off. I don't try and get things done. I don't try and, get ahead. I when I take a break, and I'm talking about a longer break here. When I take
Mhm.
a break, I rest really. I do what I want. I hear the thoughts in my head saying, "Oh, you should do this. You should do this." But I remind myself, "No, I'm on a break." And if I take a break seriously, if I take this break seriously and I really take time off, I will be more and better equipped to do the work when I come back. This is hard to do, though. It's hard to hear these thoughts about, "Oh, I'm doing nothing right now. Like I have all this stuff to do and I'm going to be so busy later, might as well get ahead." But if you neglect taking a break, or you neglect the time off, or
Mhm.
you cut corners, it's not really a break. It's not really a break, because really you're adding more stuff. You're adding this mindset that you're taking a break, and you're adding in more work. So you might as well just, well, I won't say that, because taking a little break is always better than not taking one at all. I was going to say you might as well not take a break, but I don't I don't agree with that. Something is better than nothing.
Mhm. What would you say to someone, me, who has been, told all my life, like you really want to work hard and like, like you were saying, like it's really hard to take a full break where you don't think about music at all. How am I supposed to go about that when my almost my entire life revolves around it?
I think doing things in smaller forms is better than doing nothing at all. Like having your nights off, or saying,
Mhm.
"Okay, my lunch break is my lunch break, and I'm not going to do anything in between it." And this is obviously not ideal if you're having such a busy schedule and you don't have any time to breathe. It's going to be hard to do that and stick with it, because you just feel like you have so much stuff to do, and it feels like taking time off is even, like, that's just another thing to do.
Mhm.
But if you allow yourself, if you can allow yourself to have that break, this is why having like a night routine is good. If you allow yourself to have that break, it creates more longevity in your music life, so you can actually do more of what you're supposed to do. Like these busy schedules, you have to stay energized on some level, or at least stretch your energy
Yeah,
longer.
yeah. By the way, this interview series that I do is called Practice Breaks. So it kind of
I
goes
love
with
it.
it.
I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, let's you're busy, I'm busy. We're talking about being busy. Let's wrap this up. Um, I like to give our guests a chance to sell their product. You have a little bit of products, but I want you to sell more so like what your corner of the internet is.
I have a practice journal that's meant for musicians who want to be a little more organized in their practice. Maybe if they feel like they don't have the capacity to work 4 hours a day, but they want to get some adequate things done. I have a digital practice journal. It's for iPad users. You can print it out. I'm working on making a physical copy for people who don't have iPads, because I think it's useful no matter what. And I have a few other things that I sell, but that's the best thing. If you're looking for practice organization, that's your goal. I also have a new summer online festival symposium called the Musicians Wellness Symposium. It's happening at the beginning of June next year. I haven't officially posted the dates yet, but we have some good names. So if you're interested in generally staying healthy in music school. That's going to be really exciting.
Mhm. And I just want to add to that for the audience. She does offer scholarships, and they are substantial scholarships. So please apply. I wanted to apply this year, unfortunately conflicted with the music festival I was doing, but I'll be sure to try to make it this upcoming year.
Yeah, yeah, we don't turn away scholarship applicants. Everybody will we want everyone to come regardless of money. There was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. So that's all.
Well,
But
yeah,
so much for having me. This was wonderful.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I had high expectations for this interview, and you definitely did not disappoint. Great answers.
Yay.
I love this conversation. I wish we could go on for hours, but
Yeah.
we have to practice
But we're
time
so
management.
busy. Yeah.
So
Well, it's been really nice.
it's been really great, and hopefully we can work together soon sometime. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thank you for watching, everybody. Uh,
Bye.
Classical Wellness will be in the bio or in the description. Uh, our Healing Harmonies event, which will be on October 28th, will also be in the description. And thank you for watching. Bye.